Hello and welcome. My name is Hugo Currie and I'm a Year 12 high school student at the Riverina Anglican College in Wagga Wagga, Australia. This is a series of brief interviews with some of the most amazing physicists from around the world. I'm passionate about physics and will pursue a career in physics and engineering, so I'm honoured to be able to ask a few questions of some inspirational physicists. I really want to thank them all for generously taking the time to chat and, importantly, passing on their rich insights. Hopefully other students with an aptitude for physics can take inspiration and guidance from experience and insights to shape the next generation of physicists. Today I'm talking to Professor Howard Wiseman. Professor Wiseman is a theoretical quantum physicist, notable for his work on quantum feedback control, quantum measurements, quantum information, open quantum systems, and other fundamental issues in quantum mechanics. He has numerous prestigious awards, including the Bragg Medal of the Australian Institute for Physics, the Pawsey Medal of the Australian Academy of Science, and the Malcolm McIntosh Medal, one of the Prime Minister's prizes for science. Professor Wiseman is the Director of the Centre for Quantum Dynamics at Griffith University in Brisbane. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts and experience with us today.
Thank you, Hugo.
So first off, what drew you to a career in physics, and what excites you about physics?
So I guess I've always been excited by, the natural world since kindergarten, I think, and gradually that focus narrowed toward physics. I guess initially, probably the things that often excite young people about physics, like black holes and relativity. And then a bit later, I found out about the mysteries of quantum mechanics. And that's sort of where I've been stuck ever since.
So how would you describe your journey to a physics career? Was it a direct path from high school to university and then a career, or was it less direct?
Not quite that direct. So when I was in high school, physics was one of the things I was very interested in, but I was also interested in other types of science. So I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. So on family advice, I actually started a degree in medicine. And I did 2 years of that before I decided that no, I really was a scientist, not not going to be a doctor, not that kind of doctor anyway. And so then, with some encouragement from friends who were doing science, I switched over and started a physics degree. Yeah.
Nice.
But after that, it's been pretty plain, straight down the line. Yeah.
What do you see on the horizon that would inspire the next generation in physics?
I think there's so much that's exciting in physics now. There are so many questions that we still don't know the answer to, like dark energy, dark matter, what they are. In my area, I think quantum mechanics I still find to be deeply mysterious, and I think that's still going to be a reason for people. For some people, I think these sort of really deep questions will inspire people, I think, to get into physics like they did for me. And in the more applied area, I think like physics is just as relevant to advanced technology now as it's ever been. And I think we'll probably talk more about these things later, that quantum technologies, but there's also material science. So many of the things that the technologies we hold in our hands, they're based on relatively recent physics discoveries, and that's it's a really important thing to keep moving.
So what skills have you relied on most throughout your career?
Well, gosh, lots of skills I think it takes in physics, really. So obviously some level of maths, but I'm not actually as great at maths as I'm definitely not a mathematician. I'm a theoretical physicist, but you certainly have to have some level of be good at maths to some level. But more than that, I guess, like logical thinking, but also things that people might not associate with physics, like I think creativity, intuition, storytelling. Like I always tell my students that when you getting a result is only one step along the way. You have to tell a story to explain to people why that's an important result. And yeah, so that's one of the things that I think is possibly less people think less about, but I think is really important.
Yeah, yeah. So you're a world authority in quantum physics with a long list of prestigious awards. So what excites you about quantum physics specifically?
Um, for me, it really is that it's just a deeply mysterious theory. So yeah, like what is it trying to tell us about the nature of the world? That's what excites me a lot. Of course, I don't spend my whole time thinking about that. If I did, I'd probably be a philosopher rather than a physicist. So there are lots of other things which are fun and exciting about quantum physics. So the maths is really I find really interesting because you can't really visualize it in the way that you can visualize classical physics, which describes typically, like things moving in 3 dimensions, and you can think about what that looks like. In quantum theory, it's much more abstract, and so it's the challenge, I think, of being able to think about it in the right way, to guess the right approach to solving problems. I think is makes it really interesting. And of course, like we're living in an age now of tremendous advance in quantum technologies, which is a very exciting time to be doing this sort of physics.
So how does quantum physics influence computing and communication today and in the future?
So you might be aware that I am one of the program managers in a Centre for Quantum Computation and Communication Technology. That's an Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence. So it has nodes across several universities across Australia. So I'm the manager for the Griffith node, and we have both theory and experiment here. So that's just background, right? That we're doing a lot of this stuff in Australia, both in my centre at Griffith and in many other places. But okay, what was the question again? How is it going to influence quantum computation and quantum communication? So those are exactly the sorts of things we're working on. So maybe communication, maybe I'll start with that. So quantum communication is, well, it can be many things, but the simplest example of why quantum physics is relevant there is that it enables the secure transmission of information where the security is guaranteed by the laws of physics and not merely by the difficulty of cracking a mathematical problem. So standard encryption is not, standard encryption is not completely secure in the sense that, in particular, if someone had a quantum computer, which we'll get to in a minute, they would be able to potentially hack the secured information by solving a difficult mathematical problem. Whereas with quantum communication, it's possible to, as I said, encode the communication so that very fundamental quantum physical principles prevent an eavesdropper from being able to get that information without one knowing that that's happened, and therefore knowing that the security has been compromised. So that's the basic idea of the simplest sort of quantum communication, but there is like lots of work still to be done. Like there are plenty of actually commercial quantum cryptography or quantum key distribution, more accurately, companies around, and it's been demonstrated in many countries. But there are still a lot of challenges towards moving it to a practical technology that could be rolled out for general use, and so that's where there's still a lot of work still to be done. And quantum computation, again, like it's a really exciting time now. I mean, just in the last year, there have been 2 major achievements, one in America, one in China, of demonstrating a calculation using a quantum computer, which could not be, as far as we can tell, feasibly performed on any classical computer on Earth at this time. So that's a pretty remarkable achievement. So we've had these achievements, these recent achievements, but they don't actually represent a so-called useful calculation on a quantum computer. So we haven't done like we've solved a problem that could not be solved on any classical computer, any conventional computer, but it's not really a problem that anyone is interested in, except for the specific purpose of proving that there is something that a quantum computer can do, which a classical computer can't. Okay, so what is known is that if we had much bigger and better quantum computers, then there would be lots of things we could do which are interesting and useful. And again, that's where we're heading. But there's lots of work to be done, to create computers which are better, and that's something that my group is working on. For example, how to minimize errors in quantum computing elements. In order to get to that threshold where you can actually do useful quantum computations.
Yeah. So you have so many amazing research activities going on. Can you tell us a little about what you're currently working
on? Sure. So, yes, I think it's one of the advantages of being a theorist is to be able to work on lots of things at the same time. Experimentalists tend to be, usually have one or two big pieces of equipment, and they can only do so many experiments at a time. But yes, theorists can go and collaborate with people all over the place and have a great time. So so there are lots of things that I could talk about. Maybe continue on the quantum computing line. The sort of big picture thing which I have been working with other people on, we had a big paper out last year, was what one could do combining a quantum computer and artificial intelligence. So this is a long way in the future type of idea, to test really fundamental things about the nature of observation in quantum mechanics. So this is one of the controversial things in quantum mechanics, one of the mysterious things that people disagree about, is what is a measurement or an observation in quantum mechanics, and what type of entity can play the role of the thing that can actually perform a measurement. And so, yes, we've come up with experimentally testable predictions that would enable us to answer some of those questions about that, on that issue. So I'm pretty excited about that. Even though it's not something that's going to actually happen in my lifetime, but I think that's very exciting direction to move in. A completely different sort of area, which again we had a nice paper last year, was on quantum limits to lasers. So lasers have obviously been around for a very long time, and there was a fundamental limit to how good a laser could be. So slightly more technically, how coherent a laser could be. That had been believed for decades, basically since around about 1960. And what we showed theoretically is that limit is based on certain assumptions about a laser, how a laser has to work, and that in fact the sort of quantum technologies which we are developing to do quantum computing in principle allows us to think about building a laser in a completely different way. And that if we do that, that we can far surpass that limit on how good a laser could be. So in other words, in terms of as a function of the amount of energy stored within the laser, we could get a laser beam out with far, far greater coherence than was thought possible. And that's something that, yes, I'm also beginning to do, hopefully to get funding to start experiments moving in that direction as well. So also something I'm excited about.
Yeah, that sounded awesome. Yeah. Is there anything in physics that is important or contentious that you would like to see the next generation of physicists work on?
Right. Well, I don't want to tell the next generation what to do. I think people should find their own things that they're interested in. In terms of what's contentious, Well, yes, the interpretation of quantum mechanics is still contentious, and that was what got me interested. I'm very happy for people to keep working on that. But yeah, but really, I think physics has room for people with any sort of motivation or interest that could drive them. So yeah, if you want to make the world a better place, then there's plenty of reason to go into physics in terms of like working on energy capture, storage, conversion, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think those are really important things given the challenges that we're facing in the world today, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And last question, do you have any pearls or pitfalls to offer high school students that have an aptitude for physics?
Right. So yeah, I guess one thing that occurs to me is that when I was in high school, I think a lot of the things that seemed really interesting were which were actually physics, was done in chemistry. So if you're a high school student and you think, oh, you're doing chemistry, you think, oh, this stuff is really cool, like atomic orbitals and, thermodynamics, something like that. I mean, actually, if you really want to understand those things, then it's not chemistry that you want to study at university, it's physics. So that's just one thing to be wary of, I guess, about you might be more interested in physics than you actually think. Yeah, so what other advice? I guess, yes, having an aptitude for physics is obviously a good start, but I would say that you don't want to do physics unless you actually have a love for physics, and this is something that you really want to do. But if that is the case, like if you really like physics and you're good at it, then I would definitely recommend doing it at university, because it's a career that can lead to all sorts of areas because of the way of thinking that you learn as a physicist. Really prepares people for problem solving, really getting deep into problems and logically looking at them in all sorts of areas, outside of physical systems as well. So that's, I think physicists are some of the most employable people because of that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for such a rich insight into the world of physics and quantum physics. I really appreciate you taking the time to inspire the next generation of physicists, and I'm sure those that listen will share my appreciation. So thanks for your time today.
Okay, no, thank you, Hugo. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.